Hey, welcome everyone. Today we have Clifford Donovan here. Clifford, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're the first Canadian to be on the show, and I'm also Canadian, so I'm just really happy that we're pretty early into this show, but I'm glad that we were able to get you on here.
Yeah, let's go for a rip, bud.
Let's go, hey bud. All right, so I'm going to start by introducing you to the audience. So, Clifford, you're the lead media buyer at Pilot House, which is a performance marketing agency out in Victoria, BC. And you've been selling on Amazon for about 10 years. And currently, you lead the division at Pilot House that does all Amazon. So, kind of like soup to nuts, all strategy, all direction, anything that happens on an Amazon account is overseen by you at the agency. And I think you've got like a team of 12 now. So you've got some really rich, deep experience that I think our audience could really benefit from. Does that sound like a fair overview of what you've been up to?
Yeah, that's fair. Rob will kill me if I say he's not the head of the division above me. Yeah, especially in terms of strategy and leading the team, in terms of how we're managing accounts on a day to day. That's definitely my domain.
Yeah, I mean, that's super cool. I think the first thing I wanted to ask you was, what's your specialty? Like, everyone's got something that they're uniquely good at. What would you say is your specialty?
Over the time here, and managing a lot of Amazon accounts over time, a lot comes up in the day to day of managing Amazon accounts. And especially, we do like what we call full service management, but that kind of just means like we manage their Seller Central account and their ad account. A lot of fires. So I'd say like there's kind of two parts. One being just being very good at knowing where to pay attention to things. Like, yes, do I know a whole bunch about the ad side? Sure. But um, a lot of the times the ad side is totally fine, and spending 3 days on feed files to work out the way a variation should look is a lot more important. So I'd say like being really good at knowing where to divert my attention, I think is something I have consistently gotten better at. And then being able to build that into people over time to like extend that skill beyond myself, I think is like another big part of where I've gotten decent at. I don't, it's hard to call myself a specialist at training people because I definitely would not consider myself that, but it is just like a big part of what I've ended up doing.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really interesting thing that most people who listen to this will want some insight on because it's a hard skill and it's a skill that takes a lot of time and energy to develop. I'd love to spend some time diving into that. Can you kind of start us at the beginning? Because I think you were like the first implementation person in the company you're at now, and you've been able to help them grow to 12 people, which means you probably have a lot of accounts. So if that's the number of people you have to work with in order to get that work done. So
Yeah.
where did it start?
So Pilot House as a whole is a larger performance marketing agency. There's a whole division that does Meta and Google, and they have a studio. We have studio team, and all of these different aspects. Our Amazon division sprang up from some of those Meta clients that they had wanted to do Amazon things, and we had Rob who decided we could flip up an Amazon division and had a little bit of experience there. And then I was brought on as the first hire to help build that just division. I had a decent amount of Amazon expertise, what you could have 5 years ago, kind of. And so from there, we had three, four clients at the time when I was first onboarded. And we quickly like started to make impacts in accounts. So by impacts, I mean like kind of overhauling listings, overhauling ad consoles to try to get them to a point of just being better for their business, not just like because we're talking about brands who don't know Amazon. Like they don't know what is good. They don't know what is bad. They don't like if we used ACOS as like a metric, no one would know what we're talking about. It's ROAS on everything because they're used to more traditional marketing methods. So when we're in that kind of domain, we're kind of free reign on these clients. They're like kind of like you guys just do whatever, do the Amazon thing over there. And so we found some really significant growth out of some of those earlier clients by honestly, it's a lot of trial and error back in those days of like,
Hmm.
this doesn't seem to be hitting the keywords I intended. Why is this on product pages? Stuff like that. And kind of coming up with an ad strategy that was working. And then as we that worked. Word of mouth, got more clients, brought on more clients. Our ad strategy needed to become more involved and more involved. Now we started to have clients who knew a little bit of what they were talking about. So we had to start to explain why we were doing what we were doing. And then over that course, started to become more refined. Our campaign structure started to become more refined. How we launch products started to become more refined. How we set up listings started to become more refined. We started to realize that like I can't just be in Canva making images anymore. We should probably have a person who knows something about images. So we bring in like, graphic designers and content managers and start to kind of build a team that can start to actually manage these accounts. And then that starts going well. And we bring in more accounts. And then I can no longer, between like me and the like two other people that are there at that point, we start needing a lot more people because we are growing at quite the pace, and I can no longer manage more than well, I don't can't even think what we were at when we started to like kind of have the first juniors hired on, probably like 6 to 8 accounts or so. And like I said, it's full service management. Like I could manage 10 to 12 ad only accounts all day. I feel like I could be happy, just sit there in ad console all day, very happy, no problems. Compliance issue, not my problem. I'll turn off the ads, be happy. But when it comes to like having to manage their Seller Central, now you have account health flags you have to deal with and appeals and voice the customers and everything in between. Like I feel like you start getting up to 4 or 5 accounts and you have a full-time job, depending on catalog sizes and stuff, of course. But yeah, we started to build a team there of, I think we hired a good batch of like 3 initial juniors, we'd call them. And these are people who had a little bit of dabbling on Amazon on their own. Not really their own business, typically probably reselling, stuff like that. But I think one was working at a car dealership. One, I think we had someone who was working at like Whole Foods, and then someone else who was a bartender or something like that. So like out of our 3 first hires of juniors, they didn't come from like a marketing degree background. They didn't come from some brand that had a bunch of Amazon experience or something like that. And those have been probably our 3 most successful people, I would say, that have like grown into like very impressed with how much they've grown over the past few years. And a lot of that just came from them just being like good, driven, curious people. And then I could help feed that curiosity and we could kind of experiment together, and develop these strategies together. And I think that's like a big part of what's gave us the success that we've gotten to is if a new junior were to come on, it's not like, here's how I've done things and this is the way we're going to do it. Here's our standard operating procedures of how I do a new campaign. Here's standard operating procedures of how I launch a product. Here's this, here's that, here's this. Like, we don't really have a book. I have like a training course that I put together that like is my ramblings and rants recorded that they kind of get to watch. I pity them. So sorry to anyone who has to sit through hours of me talking. But really like the idea is here's the principles that we're going for. This is kind of the idea. This is what I've done before. Seems to work. If you want to do that, do that. End of the day, the accounts that are going to be under your management are your accounts. You're responsible for how they do. Here's a way that's worked before. You can follow this way. If you come up with different ideas or new ways of doing it, let's discuss it. Let's do it. But like, I really try not to like tunnel people into something. Of course, they're new and I'll guide them through like, this is a decent way to do it. Seems to work. But there's crazy examples of people like using product targeting as almost everything that work out, or like auto campaigns that somehow are getting cheaper cost per clicks for the same damn keyword. Like all these things come out of trying these new things. If we were this specific exact match every time approach, we don't find those different niche scenarios.
I mean, first of all, thank you for such a generous answer. Like that is there's so much to unpack there, and like if we ended the podcast right now, it would already be a home run. So I want to start with actually like didn't have this question planned at all, but I would love to know what principles you kind of give to new hires and juniors and that kind of stuff, because That's a fascinating topic that most people are not really willing to talk about on a podcast. So anything you're comfortable sharing, I'm all ears. That's super interesting.
Yeah, not to give out too much of the Pilot House secret sauce, but Pilot House as an agency is, I think this is where a lot of the industry is going these days anyways, is like this performance marketing alignment, like big on alignment all the time. It's used internally all the time, this term. And what we really mean by that is just aligning with business goals of the brands that we're partnered with. Sometimes they don't really know those business goals and we have to kind of give them to them. But really, end of the day, it's typically profit. It's either profit or we want to grow like crazy and don't care about losing money on the way there. Like it's usually one of those two, typically somewhere in between. We want to grow, but we don't want to give up too much profit to do it, is typically the answer. So we'll kind of like back out from there to come up with, what is your actual break-even ROAS if we start looking at this? And then from there, it's let's look at your total revenue, look at our ad spend, and try to make that number go up. Like, let's just make total revenue go up at as little ad spend as we can and keep doing that. And like, basically, we are, our commission structure with clients is set up to charge on a percentage of that goal that we have. So like, they'll have some specific goal. We'll charge some percentage of some target that we get to. And so we'll try to do everything that we can to hit that target. And I try to do my best, and rest of our team, whenever we're trying to build these, which we do like these tailored models for each client depending on their goals, we're trying to build them in a way that is best aligned for that client. A good example of like what we'll avoid, because I think that's a better way to explain it, is really trying to avoid direct ad attributed ROAS like incentives. Okay, if we're under a 10% ACOS and then we get a 3% of revenue or something like that. But that ends up just being like, well, the buyer's just gonna send it on branded and turn off a bunch of stuff. Really trying to like, I look
Yeah.
at every one of these models and I'm like, I know, like, if I know how to game it, they're gonna know how to game it too, to make as much commission as possible off that client. And it's not what it's best for the client. So as much as we can, like sometimes we do end up in those scenarios, it is what it is. But as much as we can avoid it, we try to align to a point of like, we can't cheat this model. Like we can't like cheat our way into it. This, like, the only way to get to the higher profit number or to get to whatever is by actually making your business better. And it also incentivizes us to do all of the things. Like if a FBA measurement is screwed up, now we have to go figure out like, okay, like we have a recent client that all their FBA measurements are way out of whack and their ad console needs a ton of work. Don't get me wrong. It needs so much work. But the buyer on there is like, they're making, like, they need to stop selling everything right now. They're losing money on every sale. Like, we need to fix that. That is the priority. And so, like, literally, like, went to the client, like, I need you to measure all your products properly and give me the dimensions. And then I'm going to put them in and we're going to fight to get these dimensions fixed because that's by far more important than fixing the ad stuff. Like, I'd rather turn off ads for now. Let's fix the dimensions, fix the profitability, and then we can start scaling this. But until then, like, let's stop spending money. So, like, the entire thing from the building with the client is to be as aligned as we can to make them as much money as possible, and then we'll take a little bit of it. Now, if we make them a lot, maybe we'll take a lot of it. But like that's kind of the idea. And then the idea is to then instill those same principles in the team to say, let's make sure that whatever you're doing is what's best for your clients' businesses. And if it's not, let's get away from that idea. So like my team, anyone on the team would tell you, if I go into your account and I look at your ad console and your top spending campaign is branded in the title, I'm pissed. Like, what are we doing here? Or if it's branded or if it's an auto campaign, of course there's some scenarios where they're like, oh yeah, but they did this or that, this is why. But like for the most part, like I doubt that's that incremental. If our goal is to like almost every time that is not the goal is to like really protect branded. Like it's not usually the goal. So I'm like those kind of scenario, I'm like, let's get away from that. Let's pull way back on that, find pockets of organic or generic keywords or whatever decent volume words where they actually can rank. And let's push into there. Even if it means that metric on that, if changing that means that our commission goes down, then our model is broken. That's really like that's what a conversation will always be. If you leaning into branded was the best thing to do to make us the most money, then we need to change the way that our model is structured to make sure that that is not the way we make the most money. Which is a weird conversation to have with a lot of clients, by the way, who come in like, I actually want a 5% ACoS. My agency has been at a 5% ACoS for the last 3 years. And I'm like, well, your agency actually spent all of your money on branded, and that's why you're at a 5% ACoS.
Yeah.
So like that's a interesting conversation, but that's kind of like the principles, to be like really aligned with the clients and to find different creative ways to get to their goals if necessary. I mean, a lot of times you end up kind of following the same playbook you've used on this one to this one to this one. There's only so many different ways to skin the cat on Amazon, but
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, so it sounds like one of the key principles and the things that you really push your team on is alignment with the client's goals, and then aligning those goals to a set of strategies that you think are actually going to work on Amazon. And that is a really logical thing to do. I mean, there's that old Charlie Munger quote, if you show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcomes. So it's highly logical the way that you guys work. I think it's quite smart. And I can imagine that that would lead to some pretty good outcomes because you're forcing everybody to get on the same page or forcing everyone to talk about why you're not on the same page, which is the really hard thing to do. When it comes to leveling people up, obviously you give them principles and then you obviously coach them. But like, how have you gone about leveling different people up on your team? Because you've been doing it for a while. So I assume a bunch of people on your team have gone from bartender who basically just clicks where you tell them to click to somebody who's a pretty good manager. So I'd love to hear, like, tell that however you want, whether it's a story or whether it's a bunch of examples, but like, I'd love to hear more about that because I think that's really interesting.
yeah, good question. There's definitely been a bunch of level ups on the team. Typically, what level up means, like other than, being paid more, is managing higher level accounts or more income generating accounts, I guess, which comes with the increased responsibility of all of the things that could go wrong with those, as well as typically like more ad spend, usually those kind of things. So kind of it's like to get to the confidence in that person for them to be able to manage these higher level accounts. It's kind of like, what has that path been? And typically it's like the first, I'd say there's like we now have like levels in place, like literal levels, and like
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of different, because we're trying to define this in a lot more systematized way, because honestly our measure for the first 2 or 3 years was, if I get hit by a bus, who can take over all my accounts tomorrow?
Yeah,
And
that's
if that answer wasn't that person, it's like, well, then we don't give you the senior title. Like that was literally the question. It's like, you get the senior title. If bus hit, can you do it? And so it was kind of on vibes. Like, to be honest, a big part of it is their client comms. So there is a big and it's so funny because a lot of agencies we've talked to, I hate when people do this, by the way. The other agencies do this. But it's true. A lot of agencies are structured as, we have an account man, like at a client facing, I'll take you out for dinners, let's go out. I'll take you to a show. And that person doesn't actually do anything other than like fillet the client. The rest are, this is a family friendly podcast.
no. There's a setting. There's a setting is like do not for kids. We'll hit that one for sure this time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of their job. And honestly, we've lost clients to people who do a really good job at that. There's a big
Hmm.
skill in that relationship building, and we don't do it. We're fully remote for the most part. I say we're based out of Victoria. Our Victoria office is like a frat house. If it's like 12 people, our company has like 150 employees spread out across the world. All of that to say, our team is not structured like that. The account is, we call them a buyer. My title's also a buyer. Technically, we buy ads. We do a lot more than buy ads because we manage all the seller central side or vendor central side of things. But they are on the client calls. They have a weekly or bi-weekly client check-in, and they talk about the last week of performance, last period of performance, what went well, what went bad. And there is a very big difference between someone who's relatively new and someone who is very experienced in what they're talking about with the client and how well they handle those client conversations. Someone who's like relatively new, we'll talk about here's the campaigns that we built this week. Our overall numbers are this. This is kind of how this product is doing. This is how this product is doing. It's very vague terms. Someone who has been doing it for a while and starts to get a lot more experience starts to talk a lot more about like in the weeds of like, well, I've been pushing into these keywords and I've been trying like these different placement percentages and it's not really working. So we're kind of moving in this direction and this segment's doing better. And like if I look at the ranking of it, we saw this, like they're kind of looking at it at a very much better level, which is much more of where I'd want them to be. Like that first person is still doing a decent job usually at managing the account, but the second person is much better at explaining why they're doing a good job managing the account. And as that kind of evolves, that's when you start to see like, okay, I think they actually could manage a harder account. And then that's kind of how that progression happens. Is it's like you're kind of on the entry level accounts, one or two products, they don't make a lot of revenue, they're not a giant risk, there's not a lot you can screw up, and you can kind of follow the playbook decently and do pretty well and probably grow their business decently. But there, they then learn a lot of skills, get better, grow that business, hopefully. And in that, we then it's like, okay, well, there's this new client that's coming in. They're a little bit larger, but you seem like you know what you're doing. Kind of give them that mid-tier account. And if they knock it out of the park, and knocking it out of the park doesn't even mean like killing it with their brand. It doesn't always work out. Like products sometimes suck. Like a lot of the time they suck. Like our next person in the line, whatever, in command, whatever you want to call it, under myself, I think the brand that got him from junior to senior was not a success, but the way he was speaking with the client and the way he managed that brand was very well done. So it's like that level got to that range where it's like, okay, I think if I actually gave you one of these large accounts, you would actually do a really good job. Like you clearly have a good understanding of why you're doing what you're doing, not just what you're doing. So that kind of trying to tease out once people get to an understanding of why they're hitting the levers that they're hitting is the level when it starts to be like that. Okay, now I think you can move up because you can explain this and are better armed to get to that question. There's another level up from there. There is that level, and that is the like, there's the junior to senior. This is why we've now set up a whole bunch of levels outside of that, because junior to senior wasn't enough. There was only two, and we were like, well, now everyone's a senior. Everyone who's been here for like a couple years becomes a senior over time because eventually you just get good enough at it. But there's another level beyond like that, being able to know what you're doing and doing it well, which is the then like trying and experimenting and coming up with different ways of doing things, going out and searching for information yourself, like listening to the podcasts and following the random people on LinkedIn. Such a weird world, by the way, where like there's no other places to get information other than like weird like LinkedIn posts and YouTube channels and podcasts and stuff. Like that's our source of information. But that is like you start to see these Timbits in people as I said Timbits, by the way, I said tidbits. That's how Canadian we're getting here. You start to see, I just came from Tim Hortons. You start to see these little inklings where they're so into it that they're finding information from other sources and then they're mentioning it to the team. Oh, I saw this. I wonder if we tried this, if this would work for this client. I'm like, oh shit, like you are paying attention. And like that is a person who is like really trying to do more. And then I think that's like the next level of elevation beyond just like you're pretty good at what we're doing now, but like you're trying to make the rest of the team better as well. And I think that's like the next level up.
Yeah, so you're almost like you're going from like someone who's a person who asks for help on the team to someone who's giving help. Like that's almost a level up from junior, senior to, I'm hesitant to use the word helper, but basically contributor instead of somebody who's kind of putting up their hand asking questions.
But at the same time, something we're really, really actively trying to avoid is people being managers. Like if you're really damn good at managing brands and like being deep in the ad console and knowing how to find these little things like your missized FBA measurements, like
Mm-hmm.
it's something you don't catch right away. Like it's kind of things that like you probably need to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it takes a pretty good account manager to get to that level. I don't want to take that person off accounts and have them managing people. Maybe they suck at managing people. Like sometimes people suck and they're annoying and they're not fun to deal with. And so
Mhm.
like that person, like I think there's a real danger in taking them off of accounts and on to just like leading other people who are managing accounts. And then it also, we've tried certain things, trial and error a little bit here too, but we've gone through some people and churned through some people in the past, had some turnover with us sheltering people too much. At least that's what I think. We
Mhm.
never know for sure. But it
Yeah.
seems to be like that was why these problems had occurred. And those first batch of 3 that I mentioned, it was a kind of throw into the fire thing. We have way too many accounts. We're like, shit, we need to manage these accounts. I can't manage these accounts. This one's yours, this one's yours, this one's yours. Figure it out. Here's kind of how I'm doing it. We talk about it. We'd have calls. We talk about it. There's no set structure. It was just like, figure it out. But from there, they became very good account managers. And we think a big part of it is getting that just forced responsibility and kind of being thrown into the fire is a very good thing. When we had the anticipation that we would think, well, if we want to keep growing the team and keep growing, we have to set up more procedures and more strategies and more ways of doing things and following procedures. But then it did seem like people who were then hired weren't as connected to what they were doing, didn't feel as responsible, as linked to the success or the failure. It was just like, I'm
Mhm.
doing my job. Whereas, like, the people who were really thrown into it, it's like, this is your account. Like, it's on you. If we lose it, it's yours. Like, at that time when we were young and there was only a few of us, we couldn't manage that many accounts. We had to give it to people. We didn't have a choice.
Mhm.
Later on, it's like we're a little bit more like this is our accounts. I don't want to give it to this new person. I'm scared to give it to this new person who doesn't know what we're doing or could screw it up. So we've had to become a little bit more cautious, but that cautiousness led to people not having enough responsibility out of the gate. And then I think they lack the ownership, and that lack of ownership means that they don't grow as well into caring about what they're doing. So trying to find like the balance of like, we're here to support, and I'm here, like I have all these strategies and procedures that like, you can use if you want them, but like it's your account. So you could do a completely different thing, and if it fails miserably, hey, it's your account. So like you might fail with it. Like, but if it succeeds massively because you change something else, that's also a huge success and you'll get mad props for it. So like that's kind of like we're trying to find that balance between it. I still don't think we're there, but always trying to kind of improve on the giving people a level of ownership, but without like hurting too much of the business either. People
Mhm.
always say, is the most cliche, we hire entrepreneurs. Everyone thinks they want to be an entrepreneur. Why would everyone not want to own their own thing? Everyone wants ownership over what they do. You don't need to hire entrepreneurs. You could just hire almost everyone who cares at all about their job. Everyone wants to be successful at what they're doing for the most part. So like as long as they care a little bit, you can usually get people like give them that ownership and they'll typically care. You'll have the one-offs that don't, but for the most part.
It's okay. So I've heard this described a different way. Like basically everything you've said, and I've heard the name that people call it is like a high performance culture. So it kind of sounds like that's the environment you've fostered over the years is like a high performance culture, which maybe you disagree with that naming convention, but like that to me, reading between the lines, that kind of seems like what you've done. You've kind of set people up for success there. You've said, look, if you don't want to do it this way and you think there's a better way, then do it, but the successes and the failures are yours. To me, that reads as like a high performance culture that you've kind of been able to build. I think that really, that is hard to do and it's hard to maintain, but it seems like it's something that, for the most part, I mean, you're doing great, so clearly it's working. A question I like to ask a lot is when it comes to, building a team, leveling up a team, that kind of thing, what are some of the unsexy truths that come from that whole process?
It sucks to get rid of people. I act like a very like I'll come off. I don't care. It's business. These kind of things. But the amount of conversation that goes into the ultimate termination of an employee is like months of back and forth, like that. Because like one, from a business standpoint, it is a big loss to
Hmm.
invest a whole bunch of time into someone. They get to a certain level, and you have to get rid of them for some reason. That sucks from an investment standpoint, time investment and money investment, really. But on the other side of that, when it starts to come down to actually getting closer to making those decisions, like suddenly my humanity comes out and I'm like, this person, like maybe they're going through something hard week or a hard day or a hard month or who knows, like maybe they're going through this, and really try to get to the bottom of what's going on. Like I hate seeing these like headlines of the tech industry let's go of tens of thousands of people. I'm like, what? That's insane. Like I was like, we spent 4 months debating if we should get rid of this person because like they're still doing their job decently, but they don't seem in it. But maybe they are, and then you talk to them and they say they are, but like they don't seem to show that they are. But maybe we just haven't given them enough to like. I feel like a lot of that blame ends up like we try to internalize it a lot. It's like maybe we haven't given them the way to do that. Like that's where I get back to that whole ownership thing. Is that's where we kind of came to with a couple of people that we had to let go in that process. Was we're like, maybe this is our fault for not like giving them enough ownership of these certain accounts or not giving them this level, and they didn't feel involved or connected to it, and that's why they didn't care. So that whole thing sucks, and we go through a lot. At least I do, and then I am very fortunate, and then I get to lean on Rob to do the actual dirty work and the problems of it. But there's a lot of back and forth and debate over those kind of things. And I know there is like all the business books are a toxic person will be toxic to your whole team and you need to fire them right away and all those things. But like I really don't think there's such thing as a toxic person. I think that if someone has become toxic in your team, it's probably something you did. And then it's like probably find a way out of that. Sometimes sometimes people just aren't paid enough and they hate you for it and they resent you, and like they're like, I need to make more money and you're not paying me enough is what I deserve. And that can totally be the case. And sometimes those aren't resolvable problems. But a lot of the time, it's not money, it's like something else that's going on. And as much as like I try to be a shrewd business person, or shrewd, not shroud, shrewd business person, I still end up having way too much of a heart, I guess, at the end of the day for people. So those are the hardest. And then like there's also it is hard to train people all of the time, especially remotely. Like I love working remote. I would never trade it in for anything else. I love it. But it would definitely be easier to train people in person. There is a
Yeah.
lot of times working remotely where you're like, are they even here? Like, are they are they working? Do they have another job? Do they have 3 jobs? Like, what does this person do for their whole week? Do they really take that long to do that one thing? Like, we don't do mouse tracking or anything like that. It's all remote. It's kind of just like your own responsibility, work kind of the hours that you want as long as you're somewhat available, business hours, like that kind of thing. But it does like breed a certain level of resentment, I think, sometimes around other people, and that can be tough. And training people through that process is tough to do remotely. When like in person you could be like, come watch how I do this. Remotely, like I will screen share, please pay attention as I screen share me going through this process. I feel like a lot of that would be a little bit easier if we were in person.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like when it comes to all this stuff, you take ownership and you're like, look, if someone doesn't work out on my team, it's not just me, it's not just them, it's also the things I did. I think that speaks to the character of like that you have. Like that is a very high integrity position to take, in my opinion. So respect you there, because I think that there's a lot of people who don't necessarily take that position. I think taking humanity into the picture, I really think that's a smart way to go, and I have a lot of respect for that position. You got any hot takes or truth bombs, especially when it comes to managing teams and growing teams?
I am very anti established people, like already trained, come with their dirty bad habits from their other place. Like maybe it's from bad faith, like maybe we've just had like bad eggs type of thing, you know, but after I just spent like 5 minutes saying that there's no bad eggs. But like that, I am a big believer in like our best employees have been people who have come from actual jobs. Like I say all the time, my wife's a preschool teacher. She makes far less money than I do and works way harder than I do. I sit at home with a coffee and a cat in my lap pushing buttons on a computer. Like, job is so easy in comparison. And then I get paid more. It makes no sense. So, but because of that, I think people who have come from these kinds of jobs and just keep working these kinds of jobs really don't have like a respect level for how good we have it. Sounds like
Mm.
kind of shitty to say, like, "Oh, you have it so good." But like, really, like I pushed carts at Walmart. I like one of my best employees, like I've said, bartenders and people who have stock shelves at Whole Foods is what they were doing before they came here, or like trying to push cars at a car dealership. Those are kind of crappy jobs where you have to be on your feet all day and dealing with the worst of people. And so, like, when our client is a little mean to them, it doesn't hurt that bad when they've been literally yelled at in person, like screamed at by people in front of them in customer service environments. And like they've been on their feet all day and it sucks. And they've had to be in front of their people 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And now they just get to sit at home and go take a dump whenever they want. You know what I mean? Like it's a very cushy environment of like remote work. Like if you have an appointment on a remote job and you just like make sure your calendar's good and you can go take your appointment. You have an
Mm.
appointment when you like are the one who works at a store. You have to like get someone to cover your shift and like figure out all this stuff around it, and like maybe you don't even get to have that appointment, you have to reschedule it. It sucks. So like there's so much that's so good about it, and I find that the people that have the best work ethic remotely are the people who have come from those shitty jobs, those
Mm.
on the ground jobs. And so I think that's where like hiring from people who have established skills in the field end up getting a little too cushy in the job. Though, if I could hire the people who currently work on our team right now, who have established skills on the job, I would love to hire them. So it's like a weird thing there. But then there's another part of that, which is like it's not just the remote like aspect of it, but it's the like I guess what I'm saying is remote work is because it's set up in this way is very self-motivated.
Mm.
And that's where we run into a lot of problems is like is this person working this way? And there's some people you never question that.
Mhm.
There's just like no question. I'm like, damn, they're doing like all these things and I have like no question. I go to their client. Again, a lot of it comes out in the client calls where it's like you can see how deep someone is in these accounts. And it comes out in their client call if they're like paying attention and they know what's going on. And so, like, it's hard to be that self motivated all the time when you could just take a 3 hour nap in the afternoon and no one would know. Like, no one would know and not work the rest of the day. I don't mean like take a 3 hour nap in the afternoon and then work 3 hours in the evening. I mean like, F off for the afternoon from like noon till 5 and then start drinking at 5 and spend the rest of the day partying because like no one knows because your calendar was free that whole afternoon. So like that could totally happen. And so you really do have to be very self motivated to stay on task, not get distracted by the million other things that are going on in your life, and to stay on top of your clients. Because a lot of this, your clients aren't, especially in these full service Amazon accounts, when your client doesn't even know what's going on with their Amazon account, they're not going to be bugging you to be like, did you check account health today?
Mm.
Did you go in and see if we have negations to make in the auto campaigns today? Like, no one's on you to do these things.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're not self-motivated to take care of all the stuff that your account needs taken care of, then you're going to run into a real problem. And I think the people who are the most self-motivated came from jobs where they don't get to take a nap in the afternoon for 3 hours.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know those may be hot takes to some people, but I haven't heard anything you said there that was so crazy that I disagree with it, you know? Like those are like people hiring people who've had a real job before is a really, really good filter. It's something that always stands out on resumes for me. I mean, I sold chips. Like I drove Lay's potato
Yeah,
chips
Frito-Lay
trucks when I
truck.
was yeah, yeah, yeah. That was my summer job in college. And so, if I see any job like that, I'm like, I know you're willing to wake up at 5 a.m. to go to work. I know you're interested in doing dirty jobs. Like those kinds of things are just, they jump off the page of me when I'm looking at resumes for people to hire. I mean, yeah, honestly, this has been fantastic. Do you have any parting messages? Anything you want to kind of give to the audience as a parting gift?
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing if you're listening, you're someone who does Amazon every day, so I'm so sorry. Seller support I know was not good to you today, but I promise tomorrow they'll be so much better, surely. That listing that's taken down, definitely your account health appeal will get approved today. Like this is the day that goes through. No, I mean, I think like as a whole, my like thoughts on kind of like the industry and the platform, like Amazon's not going anywhere. Like a lot of tariff things are happening and there's a lot of differences in costs of goods and brands are possibly closing up shop or have to drastically increase prices, but there is a huge difference in people who do this well and people who do it poorly. And it's funny because it's not that hard to do well. Like I said, it's not a hard job. I'm sitting around at home, the cat on my lap with a coffee. Like, this is not difficult. We are not doing calculus. It's like basic algebra. Not even. It's arithmetic. Like, nothing that, like, managing ad consoles isn't hard. Managing Amazon accounts isn't that hard. You get as long as you have a decent product to run with, you can crush it pretty easily. It takes a certain level of skills to get there, and then you can kind of run with it. But it is still wild to me the level of incompetence that we find from like incoming accounts and brands or whatever that have come in with just most insane broken things. I'm like, who was doing this to you? So, like, please, just like the smallest amount of caring about the brands that you have in your hands. Like, they're people's businesses. Like, it's so crazy that like people are out there just like, I can manage your Amazon account, and then just like tanking their spend on all of the worst things. I'm like, please, just like be honest.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is somebody's business who you're running ads for. Treat it with the respect it deserves. I couldn't agree more. If anyone's ever comfortable enough to pay you to manage their account, you've got to treat that opportunity with the respect it deserves because it's a true compliment to your skill set or to you as a person that you made someone feel confident enough that you can give them a good result. So, yeah, couldn't agree more. Clifford, where can people find you on the internet?
I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to add me on LinkedIn, I'm Clifford Donovan. We're at pilothouse.co. If anyone is interested in any of the services that our agency offers, I should probably plug that. But really, like, you just hit me up on LinkedIn and, like, if there's anything that you actually need. I'm the worst at responding, so, like, please don't be mad, but I will get back to you if it seems important.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks so much for coming here and being so generous with your time and with being so generous with sharing insights that a lot of people don't really have. So this was super interesting. Thanks again.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
All right. Until next time.